Just a few days ago, Kevin Durant became the 8th player in NBA history to cross 30,000 career points. On top of that, he became the 3rd fastest player to do it, only behind Michael Jordan and Wilt Chamberlain. And when you take a step back and remember that Kevin Durant has basically missed 2 full NBA seasons because of injuries like with his ACL and his meniscus, this guy would have crossed 30,000 points a long time ago. He would have easily been the fastest player to get to that point. So you can add another incredible accomplishment to what is a legendary resume for Kevin Durant. And because of it, it begs the question, where does Kevin Durant rank on the all-time players list? It was a question that was brought up on First Take yesterday, and it really got me thinking about it as well. Because when you look at Kevin Durant's career, when you look at Kevin Durant's legacy overall, it really is so fascinating and complicated at the same time, which makes his placement among the all-time greatest players also fascinating and complicated. Look, before we get into everything, what's good, guys? It's DemiM7. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and you're gonna have a great week. I know it. Now, let me just be fully transparent with you. Kevin Durant is one of my favorite players of all time. Look, Derrick Rose is #1 for me. He's my personal favorite player ever. But right underneath him is Kevin Durant. I love KD. I love his game. I love how easy he makes playing the game look. He's just been phenomenal for so long. But admittedly, when it comes to making an all-time players list, the greatest players to ever play the game, there are so many different factors to take into account. There really isn't one objective way to do it, because you could just look at straight up resumes, or you could look at championships, you could look at accolades. I mean, there's so many different things. For me, I try to look at a combination of resume and accolades, but also at the same time, just the performance that they were putting out at their peak. Like when a specific player was at their absolute best, what were they doing? Again, there's no perfect science to it, but that's just kind of how I've done it. So let's talk about Kevin Durant. Let's talk about his legacy. Simply put, when it comes to just scores, forget about everything else. Forget about passing, forget about rebounds, defense, just purely scoring. You cannot name me 2-3 players better than Kevin Durant. When it comes to just pure skill set, Kevin Durant can do anything. He literally can do anything on the court when it comes to scoring. Layups, dunks, mid-range, fadeaway, three-point shot. He's got it all. Couple in the fact that he's basically a 7-footer but moves like a guard. Couple in the fact that there's an argument that he's one of the greatest shooters to ever play the game due to his unbelievable efficiency just shooting the basketball. And again, remember the fact that this guy's the 3rd fastest player to get 30,000 points while missing 2 full NBA seasons. There's a legitimate argument that Kevin Durant is the greatest scorer to ever play basketball. And if he's not the greatest, he's 2 or 3 for sure. And then when it comes to resume, his is also pretty phenomenal. He's got 4 scoring titles, Rookie of the Year, 2 NBA championships, 2 Finals MVPs, a regular season MVP, a 14-time All-Star, an 11-time All-NBA player. You get it. It's a legendary resume. So I think when it comes to just overall skill set and overall resume, it's pretty straightforward when it comes to KD. But remember how I said that it's a little bit complicated when it comes to Kevin Durant's legacy? Well, it's because of some of the decisions that he has made throughout his career. Not that anything I'm about to say is really a secret. Everybody knows about it. Everyone's talked about it. So let's just go through it. Kevin Durant started his career with the Seattle Supersonics, who eventually moved to Oklahoma City and became the Oklahoma City Thunder. He was there for 9 years, and they were able to build a very good team around KD with Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Serge Ibaka, so on and so forth. To the point where they did go to the NBA Finals against the Miami Heat, where they did eventually lose. But they were so young. They were on the come up. Kevin Durant was great. He was basically finishing 2nd in MVP voting, only to LeBron James. But then we know what happens. The Thunder end up trading James Harden, that whole nonsense. But it didn't take long for KD and the Thunder to get back to the Western Conference Finals until 2015-2016, where they ended up going up against the Golden State Warriors. This Warriors team, prior to these Western Conference Finals, Also just so happened to break the record for most wins in a single season, 73-9, beating out the 72-10 Chicago Bulls record. So we all knew it. The Warriors were great. They were very great, historically great. And in these Western Conference Finals, the Thunder were up 3-1 against the Warriors. Most of us felt like the series was over, that the Thunder were going to go to the finals to verse inevitably the Cleveland Cavaliers. But that's not what ended up happening. The Warriors ended up coming back and won the whole series. In games 5 and 6, KD did not shoot the ball well. I mean, his efficiency was like around 33%, even though he scored like 40 points for one of them. And in game 7, he did play well, just not well enough to win the whole thing. And then, of course, we all know what happens next. Kevin Durant ends up joining that same Warriors team that beat him. Now, this move to Golden State is just one of the two things that really kind of altered Kevin Durant's perception in terms of his legacy, because he quite literally took the whole if you can't beat them, join them approach. Now, what he ends up doing with Golden State is pretty well known. They end up winning 2 championships. He wins 2 finals MVPs, and he absolutely would have won 3 championships and 3 finals MVPs if he didn't get hurt in that 3rd year. Maybe if he did have that 3rd championship with Golden State and a 3rd finals MVP, maybe this whole top 10 players of all time thing wouldn't even be a question. But I digress. KD had a lot of success in Golden State, and quite frankly, that was peak Kevin Durant. He was elite on both ends of the floor. His defense was phenomenal. And even though you can make the argument that KD going to the Warriors was one of the weakest moves by any superstar in any sport, I also kind of look at it this way. See, you can say that Kevin Durant needed the Warriors to win a championship, but you can also say that the Warriors needed Kevin Durant. I mean, let's think about that Warriors championship in 2014-2015. The only reason they won it was because LeBron didn't have Kyrie or Kevin Love to help him. Even without his 2 best players, LeBron James took those Warriors to 6 games. An argument could easily be made that Cleveland would have won the championship had he had Kyrie Irving at least. If that were to happen, then this entire discussion about KD joining the Warriors would have been completely different. The way that I see it, Golden State wouldn't have won those championships against Cleveland if they didn't have Kevin Durant. For all intents and purposes, they needed Kevin Durant. I understand that might not be a very popular opinion, but that's just kind of how I look at it. Anyway, let's go back to 2018-2019, where Kevin Durant got hurt and the Toronto Raptors end up winning the NBA championship. Because it was at this offseason where Kevin Durant makes a decision that, frankly, I feel like was a big mistake. Because during that season, Kevin Durant had major issues with Draymond Green. We all know what happened, that on-court altercation where Draymond was basically telling KD, we don't need you. KD took that personally, so he decided to do something that I don't think he should have done. He decided to leave the Golden State Warriors to go to the Brooklyn Nets and play with Kyrie Irving. James Harden ends up joining them too, but basically the Brooklyn Nets experiment was a giant disaster for multiple reasons. I'm not going to go over the Kyrie vaccination stuff or the anti-Semitic stuff that he was promoting. I'm not going to go over any of that. But when Kyrie, KD, and James Harden were on the court together in Brooklyn, that offense was unreal. And the biggest thing for me is that in the 2020-2021 season, the Brooklyn Nets, at least in my opinion, would have absolutely won the NBA championship. I mean, at the end of the day, I look at the whole Brooklyn thing as just terrible luck. Because in the 2021 playoffs, Kyrie Irving ends up getting hurt and James Harden ends up playing on one leg, basically. And in the Eastern Conference semifinals, Game 7, Kevin Durant hits this turnaround shot to win the game, but his big toe was on the three-point line. They end up going to overtime, they end up losing, and the Bucks end up winning the whole thing. Now, in my opinion, Brooklyn would have won the championship if KD's foot was behind the line. And that, again, would have altered Kevin Durant's legacy completely. It wouldn't have made this entire top 10 thing a question. He had awful luck when the Warriors were trying to three-peat because he got hurt. And then he got awful luck here because his best teammate got hurt and his big toe was on the three-point line. The rest is pretty much history. The Brooklyn Nets go nowhere. The entire team ends up breaking apart. Kevin Durant ends up requesting a trade to the Phoenix Suns. And so far, the experience has not gone great for him. I think it's also fair to point this out. KD has had a history of joining these number 1 top teams. He did it when he left OKC to go to Golden State. I believe they were the number 1 seed in the West at the time. And when he decided that he wanted to leave Brooklyn, he wanted to go to the Phoenix Suns, who, again, were the #1 seed in the West at the time. I think it's only fair to point that out. So now that we've gone through all of that, what do I think? Where does Kevin Durant rank all time for me? Is he in my top 10? And honestly, after thinking about it, yeah, Kevin Durant should be considered a top 10 player in NBA history. Because the fact of the matter is, if it wasn't for horrible luck with injuries, Kevin Durant would have 4 championships and 4 finals MVPs right now. Or at the very least 3 if you don't think he would have won the championship with Brooklyn. His injuries have also held him back from potentially holding the record for most points ever scored by an NBA player, a record that LeBron James holds now pretty comfortably. When I think about that, and when I also think about what Kevin Durant was at his peak, and how somehow, even after his Achilles injury, he ended up being a more polished NBA player in Brooklyn, scoring with better efficiency and just, again, looking more polished as an overall player. It's insane. Most players don't get better in anything after an Achilles injury, but Kevin Durant did. Look, I know that Kevin Durant has this sort of perception online where he's very sensitive and, with all the different stuff that he tweets and, of course, the burner accounts, we all know about that. But I don't really care about all that stuff. I care about Kevin Durant, the basketball player, and what he has done and what he could have done. And in my mind, when I take everything into account, Kevin Durant deserves to be in the top 10 of the greatest players to ever play basketball. As far as where, he's obviously going to be in the bottom part of the top 10. Maybe I'll make a video going over my top 10 at some point. But yeah, that's all I've got to say about it. Let me know in the comments what you think. Where do you think KD ranks all time? And until next time, peace.